Jujutsu Kaisen is a series that never disappoints when it comes to their fights. So I started thinking about all of the fights in JJK, and all of them are really good and seem fitting for what's going on in the story at the time for each fight. But there's just one fight that sticks out like a sore thumb. I thoroughly analyzed this fight over and over to make sure I wasn't just being a hater, and all it did was solidify it being the worst fight in Jujutsu Kaisen. The fight I'm talking about is Reggie versus Megumi. In today's video, we'll be going over why this fight is the worst fight in JJK. If you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments. Before we get to the nitty gritty, there are some things I need to clarify so I can provide you guys with the best reasoning. I don't think saying something like, oh, Nobara versus Momo is the worst fight is reasonable, because events like that are supposed to be insignificant. They're not meant to be high tier. There are just small moments. A bad fight is whenever a relevant fight happens and it doesn't meet the standards that the story has set for it. It has to involve one of our main characters, and the fight has to be informative and progressive. With that being said, now we can go into how Reggie versus Megumi is the worst fight. The problem with Megumi in this fight, and this is something that I've noticed with Megumi in general, is that him and Yuji have this friendly rivalry where they're trying to compete with each other, trying to get stronger. Gojo talks about how Yuji has the potential to be as strong as him, and he says that Megumi has even more potential than Yuji. Gojo also tells him about how the past head of their clans had the same techniques as himself and Megumi, and says they both killed each other, implying Megumi at some point should be on par with Gojo due to his 10 Shadows technique. Megumi is supposed to be a monster, but all of his fights are extremely underwhelming and do not fit the standard we were given. Yuji, who has less hype surrounding his strength, has had way more progress than Megumi has had at all. Don't get me wrong, things have gotten interesting with Sukuna now taking Megumi as a vessel, but that's not Megumi himself progressing. Sukuna is the one able to use his technique at such a high level, not Megumi. When you look at Yuji's fights, he's had a good, consistent antagonist with Mahito. Each fight he has gotten substantially stronger, and the stakes of his fights are far greater and much more serious, which makes Yuji seem like a much stronger fighter. Yuji literally fought Hanami and unlocked Black Flash, had one of his best and most intense fights with Choso, and he fought Mahito at his full potential. This man Yuji fighting Yuta even fights Maguna. This fits Yuji's unnatural strength and potential. Meanwhile, Megumi barely survived in the first chapter against Fodder Curses, got beat up by Hanami, barely survived against the Finger Bear. They only gave him a domain, and it isn't even a complete one. He pops domain on Dagon and almost dies just being there in a domain clash. With Toji, he was just getting outclassed. He had no chance at all. Haruta beats him up, and this is all coming from the guy who's at one point supposed to be Gojo's level. It's just disappointing that someone who's not as decked out as Megumi, which in this case it would be Yuji, has a much more consistent narrative power progress than Megumi. Yuji's fighting some of the toughest people we've seen in the entire series, and Megumi's out here losing every fight against the weaker characters. Gege set up Megumi with expectations of him having some insane power-ups, and he shouldn't be getting beat up every time he fights. Gege gave Megumi a domain instead of a Black Flash so he could keep up with Yuji's progress, but he didn't even give Megumi a full domain. Everything Megumi has done until Sukuna transfers to him feels pretty lame in comparison to the expectations. Now that I've covered Megumi's expectations versus what he's actually done, I'll talk about the fight and tie in everything I was just talking about. When they finally get Hikari to agree to join them, they say they're gonna target Higuruma and Hajime. Yuji and Megumi have the objective of going for Higuruma, and Hikari and Panda are going for Hajime. When Yuji and Megumi go into the colony to look for Higuruma, they get teleported to a random spot and they're separated from each other. Megumi and Yuji just continue with what they're supposed to do and try to find Higuruma. They fight a couple of people, but eventually Yuji gets to the main objective. Meanwhile, Megumi is getting jumped by some randoms. We've got Chizuru, who has claws, Iori, who just blows stuff up, and then Reggie, who makes things out of receipts and wears some silly dress. Compare them to who Yuji is fighting, which is Higuruma. He has a serious tone to him. We see a little of his backstory. He's strong and he has a domain. Meanwhile, Megumi is literally getting pressed by goons. This highlights what I'm saying, where Megumi has fights that don't progress him, and this is failing to meet the standard of someone who has more potential than Yuji, and Yuji is getting a much more serious fight against a stronger opponent. The silliness of Megumi's opponent opponents make them look much weaker, and that hinders Megami's strength progression. Megami is trying to fight them, he's running away until he kills Chizuru. Then Iori was about to blow up Megami. Yes, the random goon was just about to catch Megami and kill him. But to make this fight even better, they release a gag character to save Megami, which is Takaba, of course. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't a diss to Takaba. I like him, but when a guy who's supposed to be elevated to the heights of Gojo is fighting, I expect more serious development and fighting, similar as to how Yuji had his whole arc with Mahito. Imagine Yuji fighting Mahito, he's getting beat up, and instead of Todo popping up, it's just Takaba. If we're going to progress our characters, it needs to be in a serious tone, because if it's silly, the impact of it isn't going to be as strong. That's why when Yuji fights Ezo and Ketsusu, it's more impactful than when he fights the Grasshopper Curse. It's all about the tone and setting. Up until this point, this is literally a goofy fight. A bunch of fodder goons, and then Takaba pulls up. Takaba slams Iori, and to make things even better, he beats Iori by using the 1000 years of death technique on him. Even though Takaba is a funny character, this is just straight up silly, and throws the tone of this whole fight off. Once he beats Iori, then Megami and Reggie continue fighting. Megami flies off to go to the gym, and Reggie summons an electric scooter and follows Megami while singing la-di-da, la-di-da. Like, what is going on here, bro? This fight shouldn't be this way if you're trying to showcase how strong Megami is now. We should be getting a strong and menacing opponent to make Megami more compelling, to make his growth, his strength more compelling. But Megami is stuck with Reggie. They decide to make this even more silly. This man Reggie starts attacking this boy Megami with plant pots, literal plant pots, and Megami is getting damaged by the plant pots. Reggie also attacks with carrots. Now, they were knives inside of them, but once again, it's just being a silly fight. Once Megami gets attacked by plant pots and carrots, he's like, that's enough. He's too strong. It's time to summon Domain. And the rest of this fight isn't too bad, but there isn't a good payoff for Megami's strength. He just uses Domain as an extension, which is what he's been doing because he doesn't have a complete domain. He doesn't get anything new. His 10 Shadows technique doesn't progress. He feels extremely stale for a character who has more potential than Yuji. This fight is bad because these fights are meant to show the limits of our main characters. For example, we saw how Yuji did with no curse energy, and we saw both Yuta and Hikari's full strength. To me, it's disappointing because Megami is supposed to be extremely strong. Gojo implies that at some point he should be on his level, but these fights have given him no progression, and it doesn't seem like he's extremely strong due to his opponents, which is why I highlighted so much the silly aspect of his Reggie fight. Yuji is over here fighting Choso, Mahito, and in those fights, Yuji grows substantially, and it's impressive because these characters have serious tones to them. They seem strong. It aligns with Yuji's immense physical strength and his quick learning of cursed energy. Megami in each fight should be developing more of his 10 Shadows technique. At this point, he should have a full domain, or Gege should have just given him a Black Flash amp. The Reggie fight is bad because we have no progression for one of our main characters, Megami. It's a silly fight, we get nothing from it. It has failed in the eyes of the expectation set for Megami, which is to progress to reach the heights of Gojo Satoru. Don't take this as me dissing everyone in that fight. It's more of the fight fails because it has no substance narratively. Megami has no progression in this fight and remains stale. I think it would have been better if it was way more serious and if Megami developed a new technique or completed his domain. But they didn't do that, so this fight is really something you can skip over because there's no progression. It's almost a filler fight to what could have been an amazing progression for Megami, and that's what they failed in. That's what makes this fight the worst fight. That is all I have to say about this topic. If you guys enjoyed this fight though, that's totally fine. I just think it fails to meet the standard the story set. You guys are welcome to comment on what you guys think is the worst fight or just your thoughts on this topic. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe as I will be making more content like this, and feel free to comment any suggestions. I'll see you guys in the next one.